She looked me dead in the eyes, slipped the ring off her finger, and whispered like she was handing me a gift, "Roger, I need time to find myself." Then she walked away. Just like that. No screaming, no fight, no explanation, just silence, clean, surgical, final. I stood in the middle of our apartment with the anniversary dinner still warm on the table, roses wilting in the vase, and the note I'd written folded neatly beside her plate. "Linda, you made everything make sense. Let's make it official." But she never read it. She didn't need to. She had already made her decision long before that night. I didn't chase her, not because I didn't want to, but because I knew. You don't chase someone who's already decided you're no longer part of their destination. I let her walk. I watched her back as it faded through the door. I memorized the sound of her heels against the hallway tiles. That was the last time I heard her leave. People always talk about heartbreak like it's some loud explosion, crying, begging, fists on the floor. But for me, it was quiet. It was her last glance over her shoulder, cold and dry. It was the unopened wine bottle. The candles are still flickering. The way I stood still for hours after, like I was waiting for a rewind button that never existed. Linda had always been good at leaving gently. Her words were always wrapped in silk, even when they were stabbed. "You're amazing, Roger. You really are, but I don't know who I am when I'm with you." That was her way of saying, "You love me too much and I love you too little." I didn't argue. What would have been the point? She didn't want clarity. She wanted distance, and I had never been the man to beg. The next morning, I folded her note, placed it in a box with every letter she ever wrote me, and put it in the top shelf of the closet, buried behind winter coats we never wore in California. That was where I write her to. Everyone kept asking if I was okay. My friends, my sister. Even Jose, my former business partner, had the nerve to call and offer a beer, said he heard about Linda. I didn't ask how, I didn't need to. Rumors move faster than truths in this city, especially when they're whispered over wine between people pretending to care. What they didn't know was, this wasn't the first time Linda had drifted. She had always danced on the edge of absence. Her body would be present, but her eyes would be elsewhere. I used to think she was dreaming big. I used to think that mystery was beauty. But over time, I realized, it wasn't a mystery, it was an escape. She was always preparing for the day she'd vanish without guilt, and I had handed her the doorframe. They say when someone tells you who they are, believe them. I didn't. Not when she'd say things like, "Sometimes I wonder if I was meant to be someone else," or, "Do you think people can outgrow love?" I'd just laugh, kiss her forehead, tell her, "Not us." But maybe I was only answering for me. It took her 3 minutes to unravel 7 years, 3 minutes to turn me from her home to her holding cell. I didn't know where she went after that. Europe maybe. She always wanted to see Vienna. Or maybe she went to find herself in someone else's arms, someone who didn't remind her of what she owed. But wherever she went, I gave her exactly what she asked for. Time, distance. And eventually, a version of me she could never reach again. I didn't slam the door, I didn't burn the letters, I didn't scream her name at 2 a.m. I just disappeared. And by the time she realized what she lost, I had already given it to someone who never asked me to shrink so she could grow. I gave Linda eternity. She just never thought it would mean a life without me. My name is Roger Blake. I used to think that love was the greatest form of purpose a man could have. I was the kind of guy who remembered how she liked her coffee in each season, who saved the ribbons from her birthday gifts because they matched her hair, who rearranged client meetings just to watch her rehearse an off-Broadway monologue she'd never perform again. My friends called it obsession. My sister called it blind devotion. Linda called it too much, but I called it love. For 7 years, I built a life around Linda like she was the sun and I was just a planet grateful to be in orbit. Linda Bennett was the kind of woman who never belonged to one place. Her mind always floated somewhere between ambition and artistry. She used to joke that her soul had a passport and a deadline. Born in New Jersey, raised in Miami, graduated from a liberal arts school in New York, she had the kind of accent that changed depending on who she was talking to. She could hold a glass of wine like a duchess, roll her eyes like a queen, and disappear from a room without even walking out. We met at a tech demo in Brooklyn, of all places. I was presenting a pitch for a learning algorithm I'd coded over 3 sleepless months. She was there with a mutual friend, only half listening until I mentioned using it to preserve storytelling structures. Afterward, she came up to me, not to compliment the tech, but to ask, "Do you think an algorithm can understand love?" I remember standing there like an idiot, mouth slightly open, trying to decide if she was mocking me or being genuine. She smiled before I could answer, handed me her number, and said, "Call me if you ever want to test your theories on something irrational." And just like that, she became my favorite variable. Our relationship didn't explode like fireworks, it simmered. Sunday mornings turned into shared grocery lists. Arguments too. Earned into apologies before midnight. I loved her in small, consistent ways, charging her phone when she forgot, massaging her neck while she graded papers, sending her articles about books she'd abandoned. She loved me like she was afraid of permanence, always careful, always one foot inside the door and the other hovering near the exit. But I thought I could fix that. I thought if I loved her just enough, she'd stop needing to leave. That was my first mistake. At the time, I ran a small AI consulting firm. Startups hired us to optimize their operations using custom machine learning tools. We weren't flashy, but we were stable, profitable. Jose and I co-founded it out of a basement, sleeping under our desks during the lean years. We used to be brothers. Blood couldn't have made us closer. But as the company grew, so did the cracks between us, especially after Linda started showing up more at the office. She'd bring us lunch. Laugh a little louder at Jose's jokes. Offer feedback on presentations that I had built slide by slide. She was polite with him, always just enough to avoid suspicion, but my gut started to tighten every time she lingered in the conference room 5 minutes longer than needed. Still, I told myself it was nothing. That's how much I trusted her. That's how much I needed to believe the story we were writing still had chapters left. Linda had dreams, big ones. She wanted to open a cross-cultural art space, travel to Bhutan, write a memoir before she turned 35, and maybe, just maybe, get married in a castle one day. But she hated being defined by someone else's timeline. I learned that early. Every time I made plans beyond 6 months, she'd say, "Let's wait and see where we're at." It wasn't commitment she feared, it was finality. I proposed on our 7th anniversary. Not with fireworks or flash mobs, just us, in our apartment, lights dimmed, her favorite jazz record playing in the background. I made risotto, she hated it. I laughed, she didn't. And when I knelt down with the ring, her hand trembled, not with joy, but hesitation. She said yes, but I saw the pause before she said it. I ignored it. That was my second mistake. A week later, I found the ring in the bathroom cabinet. No note, no explanation, just the ring, sitting on top of her skincare products like it was just another decision she hadn't committed to. She came home 2 hours later, looked at me like I had broken something and said, "Roger, I need time to find myself." I remember those exact words, not us, not our future, just hers. I didn't cry, I didn't yell, I just nodded and said, "Take all the time you need." What I didn't say was, "You already had it all." That night, I deleted our shared calendar. I canceled the castle tour she never confirmed. I returned the wedding suit I'd bought in secret, and when Nancy, of all people, called to check in 2 days later, I didn't hesitate to answer. Nancy Cho had always been the quiet shadow in the room. She and Linda had met in college, roommates turned frenemies turned distant acquaintances. Where Linda sparkled, Nancy grounded. She was the type who listened more than she spoke, observed more than she intruded. She had been to every one of Linda's birthdays but never posed in the photos. When Linda got too drunk at the New Year's party, it was Nancy who held her hair back while I stood useless in the hallway. And when Linda forgot our anniversary 1 year, it was Nancy who baked a chocolate tart and dropped it off, saying, "She probably just got overwhelmed." That's how she was, always filling the gaps Linda left behind. When she called, her voice was tentative. "I know it's not my place, but if you ever need someone to talk to, someone who knew her but wasn't really her friend anymore, I'm here." I invited her to coffee the next day. We never talked about Linda that afternoon. We talked about everything else. Nancy had just gotten promoted at her architectural firm. She showed me blueprints of a wellness retreat she was designing in Napa. I told her about my latest contract in Austin. She laughed when I said I still couldn't cook rice without burning it. It felt like breathing after holding it in for too long. Over the next few weeks, Nancy became a constant, a slow, steady rhythm where Linda had always been jazz. She didn't try to fix me, she didn't need to, she just stayed, without needing a reason. People say you can't fall in love twice the same way. They're right. My love for Nancy didn't explode or burn. It built, like a house with deep foundations and weatherproof glass. When Linda left, she took the version of me who believed love meant chasing. With Nancy, I learned that love meant choosing, every day, without the fear of being too much. Jose showed up again 3 months later, unannounced, asking if I'd heard from Linda. He looked tired, guilty. I didn't ask why. I didn't care anymore. Whatever he and Linda had shared, if anything, was no longer mine to dig through. I had moved on, or rather, I had finally found stillness. And in that stillness, I understood something I never saw when I was with Linda. Some people say they need time to find themselves. But what they're really asking for is a life where you no longer exist. I gave Linda that life, and I didn't look back. 3 weeks after Linda left, I opened Instagram and saw a photo that stopped my breath. It wasn't the image that hurt, it was what was missing from it. No caption, no tags, just a glass of red wine on a balcony in Florence, with a blurred reflection of 2 figures in the glass. One of them had a familiar watch, Jose's. Black leather band, silver frame, and a tiny scratch at the top left corner from the time he dropped it during a pitch rehearsal. The photo had her subtle fingerprints all over it, the color grading, the angle, the quiet attempt to make it seem like she was alone. But she wasn't. She had never been. I didn't say a word, I didn't send a message, I just stared at the screen and let the reality unfold like a slow car crash. Jose. The man who once stood beside me as I filed my LLC papers, the man who hugged me when I got into Stanford, the man I invited to every dinner party Linda and I ever hosted. He was the one. I replayed our last few months like a forensic detective, Linda's sudden absences, her vague smiles when I asked about her day, the time I came home early and heard her on a call, voice low, laughing in a way she hadn't with me in months. When I asked who it was, she said, "Just a podcast," and I believed her. I always did. I trusted her because I loved her. I didn't think to ask who was on the other end of her silence. It wasn't just the potential affair that crushed me, it was the idea that she might have left not to find herself, but to find someone she'd already chosen. The next time I saw Jose was accidental. I was at the firm's downtown building for a follow-up with a client we'd both once secured together. The receptionist told me Jose was already in the conference room. My body froze. I hadn't expected that. I hadn't prepared for it. I walked in anyway. He was laughing with the client, gesturing at a mock-up on the screen. He turned and froze when he saw me. The smile drained, his shoulders stiffened like someone had poured ice down his back. "Roger," he said, awkwardly extending his hand like we were strangers. I didn't shake it. "Didn't know you'd be here." "Last-minute request," he replied. His voice cracked slightly. "Just helping out with specs." The meeting moved forward like a limp rehearsal, dry, disjointed, tense. I barely heard a word. I kept thinking about that watch, that laugh, that glass of wine. When the client finally left, Jose lingered by the window. "Can we talk?" he asked. I didn't respond. "She said you two were done before anything happened," he blurted. I didn't plan it, man. It just happened." I turned to him slowly. "She said she needed time to find herself." He nodded, shame crawling across his face like oil. "And you were where she found herself?" I asked, calm but cutting. "In your arms?" "It wasn't like that," he said. "She was hurting. You were distant near the end." A quiet chuckle escaped me. "Distant? I was planning our wedding." Jose's jaw tightened. "You always made her feel small, Roger, like she was living in your shadow." I stepped closer. "And you thought you could be her light?" He said nothing. I left the room. After that, the betrayal felt like a wound I couldn't locate, a slow internal bleed. It wasn't just Linda I lost, it was the story. The idea that love, built honestly and patiently, was enough. It was the belief that history mattered more than novelty. Nancy noticed the change in me before I did. One night, as we sat on my balcony eating takeout, she asked softly, "Have you talked to her?" "No." "Do you want to?" "No." "Then why do you still look like you're waiting for her to explain?" I didn't answer. Nancy leaned forward, her elbows on her knees. "Roger, sometimes the worst thing someone can do isn't leaving, it's pretending they didn't already leave long ago." I closed my eyes. She doesn't deserve to take up space in your silence, Nancy whispered. But Linda didn't just take space in my silence, she started to haunt my reputation. A week later, I got a call from an old mutual friend, Darren. He sounded hesitant. Hey, did you really go off on Linda? What? She said you accused her of cheating, that you tried to control where she went, who she talked to. My grip tightened on the phone. Is that what she's telling people? She told me not to get involved. I just thought. That doesn't sound like you. It isn't. But the damage had begun. Whispers followed me into rooms. People who once hugged me now offered polite nods. My inbox shrank, invitations stopped, and Linda, she was posting again, smiling in Venice, laughing in Morocco. A caption under one of her photos read, "Sometimes losing yourself is the only way to be found." I stared at it for minutes. Then I opened a new note on my phone and typed, "Sometimes walking away is the kindest thing they'll ever do for you." I sent it to Nancy. She replied, "Frame it, tattoo it, or just live it." It wasn't Linda's absence that hurt most. It was that she replaced me with someone I once called family and then rewrote the ending like I had been the villain all along. So I did the only thing left to do. I deleted every trace. The photos, the trip plans, the shared playlists, the password folder she used for flight deals. I gave her what she wanted. Time, silence, distance. And slowly, Nancy filled the spaces Linda left behind, not as a replacement, but as a restoration. One morning, as we sat on the kitchen floor drinking coffee, Nancy looked at me and said, "You don't flinch when her name comes up anymore." "Because she doesn't live here anymore," I said. Nancy tilted her head. "In your apartment?" "In my mind." She smiled. "Good. She doesn't deserve real estate she didn't pay for." Linda may have taken the exit first, but I was the one who locked the door behind her. And when she tried to come back, she'd find the keys changed and the lights off. Not out of bitterness, out of survival. It's strange how pain doesn't always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it shows up like fog, quiet, slow, suffocating. After Linda left, I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I functioned, I replied to emails, I returned calls, I even laughed once or twice at a meme Nancy forwarded, but inside, I was hollowed out, like someone had taken a spoon to my chest and scooped out whatever used to beat there. I couldn't walk past certain places without feeling like I was betraying a version of myself. The bookstore where we first argued about Murakami, the jazz bar she claimed had the worst cocktails but the best saxophone solos. The corner coffee shop where we made a pact to never go to bed angry, ironic considering how many nights she left me alone with her silence while she stayed out late, citing brain fog or creative blocks. I kept waiting for the anger to come. I thought betrayal came with fire, but mine came with numbness and guilt. Guilt that I didn't see it coming. Guilt that I loved her more than she loved me. Guilt that I might have missed the signs, not because they weren't there, but because I didn't want to admit that the woman I adored was slowly slipping away, day by day, laugh by laugh, lie by lie. I spent hours playing back every moment, like a detective at a crime scene with no weapon, no fingerprints, just a gut feeling and too much time. That time she cancelled our weekend trip to Big Sur because she had a headache, but posted a selfie from a museum I never knew she'd gone to. That late-night call I overheard where she told someone, "No, he doesn't know anything." That morning I kissed her goodbye, and she didn't kiss back, just patted my shoulder like a nurse in a hospital room. But the worst part wasn't the moments I remembered. It was the ones I forgot. The days she pulled away slowly enough that I didn't even notice the distance growing until there was nothing left between us, but space, and in that space, she bloomed without me. I thought about calling her sometimes, just to hear her voice, just to ask her, was any of it real? But I didn't, because deep down, I knew the answer. If it had been real, she wouldn't have left like that. People don't abandon homes they built brick by brick unless they never saw it as home in the first place. I started to notice things I used to overlook. How Linda only ever showed affection when people were watching, how she never said, "I love you" first, how she dismissed my fears as overthinking and my concerns as controlling, how she laughed louder around Jose. I began to realize that I had mistaken her chaos for passion, that I had confused unpredictability with depth, that I had loved a woman who needed to be adored more than she needed to be known. One night, I found a photo album we'd made during our 3rd year together, a small scrapbook filled with Polaroids, ticket stubs, and scribbled captions in her handwriting. On the last page, she had written, "No matter where life takes us, I hope we always find our way back." I stared at that line for almost an hour. Then I lit a match. It didn't burn the way I thought it would. The fire was too quick, too quiet, just like her. Nancy came by later that night. She noticed the smoke in the bin but didn't ask. She never asked until I was ready. That was the thing about Nancy. She didn't pry, she waited. She gave me space not to escape, but to breathe. Still, I struggled to let her in. Every time Nancy smiled, a part of me flinched, not because she wasn't real, but because I was terrified I'd misread everything again. That maybe I didn't know what love was anymore, that maybe I had never known. I didn't want to project Linda's ghost onto Nancy's shadow. I didn't want to punish someone kind just because someone cold had taught me what warmth could pretend to be, but I couldn't stop second-guessing myself. Was I moving on too fast? Was I healing or hiding? Was Nancy a rebound or a revelation? Those questions haunted me more than Linda's betrayal. And then came the dreams. In them, I'd see Linda standing at our old apartment door, asking to come in. Sometimes she'd be crying, sometimes she'd be laughing, sometimes she was already inside, making tea like nothing ever happened. In every dream, I said nothing, I just watched her. When I woke up, I always felt like I'd run 10 miles barefoot. My throat dry, my hands clenched, my heart racing towards something I couldn't see. Sleep became an enemy, silence became a mirror. And through it all, I still kept wondering, did she ever feel anything? Did she ever regret it? Because I did, not the love, but the blindness. Nancy once told me, sometimes people leave because they think they'll find more, sometimes they just don't want to be accountable for what they already broke. I asked her, what if they come back? She shrugged. Then it's your decision whether they find a door or a wall. I didn't respond that night. But I started building. Not a door, a wall, not out of spite, but out of necessity. Because every time I thought about Linda, I didn't feel love anymore. I felt interruption. As if she had walked into a life I was meant to live fully, and paused it for years. That realization both shattered and freed me. I didn't hate her. I pitied her. She said she needed time to find herself, but what she really needed was a version of herself that could leave guilt behind. And I gave her that gift. I carried the guilt for both of us. Until I couldn't anymore. Until I gave it back, through silence, through distance, through choosing someone who never asked me to prove my worth, just to earn their loyalty. Love isn't supposed to make you feel disposable. And for the first time in years, I finally stopped feeling like trash someone once treasured. The invitation came in a cream-colored envelope with gold trim. I almost mistook it for junk mail until I saw her name. Linda Bennett invites you to the opening gala of her new creative wellness institute, The Found Space. The name alone made my jaw clench. The Found Space. As if what she found was peace and not wreckage left behind for someone else to sweep up. At first, I thought it was a mistake, some mass-sent press invite, but then I flipped the card over. Roger, I know it's been a long time, I hope you'll come, some stories deserve a better ending. There was no signature, no return address, just her handwriting, same loops, same spacing, she hadn't changed that part of herself. Nancy was the first to see the envelope. I had left it on the counter, not thinking she'd be home early. She stood there, reading it once. Then again. Her face didn't change, but her eyes did. She didn't ask what I planned to do. She just said, "Be careful, she's not sending that for closure, she's testing the lock." I didn't intend to go. I told myself I had no reason to. But I couldn't stop staring at the card. A few days later, I found myself standing across the street from the venue. Not dressed for a gala, not planning to go in, just watching. The building was a minimalist marvel, glass and wood with too much elegance to be casual. People in tailored suits and overpriced dresses walked up the steps, sipping champagne before even entering. And then she appeared. Linda. In a cream-colored gown that caught the light like it was made of silk and sin. Her hair was swept up, just like she used to do on the nights she wanted to feel powerful. Her smile was effortless. Her laugh hadn't changed. She moved like a woman who had never broken anything. But what made my chest tighten wasn't just seeing her again, it was seeing him. Jose. Standing beside her in a sharp navy suit, smiling like he belonged there, like he had always belonged. He poured her a drink, she touched his wrist briefly. They laughed. And then, Linda turned her head. Saw me, across the street, and froze. For just a second, her smile slipped. She didn't wave, she didn't call out, but she knew, and I left. That night, I told myself that was it, final confirmation. Closure wasn't a conversation, it was a mirror, and I finally saw clearly. But life wasn't finished, twisting the knife. The next day, a mutual friend, Casey, called. I hadn't heard from her in months. She was one of those social satellites who drifted around both of us, orbiting without ever really taking sides. Roger, have you heard? She asked, hesitant. Heard what? About Jose. And Linda. I braced myself. They broke up. The words didn't register at first. What? Last night. Apparently, he proposed at the after-party. She said no, in front of everyone. It was bad. I didn't say anything. Casey continued. She told him she couldn't pretend anymore, that she only ever loved one man, and he wasn't standing in front of her. I felt something sharp twist in my gut. It wasn't joy, it wasn't triumph. It was fury, because I knew what was coming next. The next morning, she appeared. At my office, unannounced. Linda stood by the elevator, clutching a paper cup of coffee like it could shield her from my silence. I didn't say anything, I just walked past her. She followed me into the hallway. Roger, please, I just want 5 minutes. I turned to face her. 5 minutes isn't enough for what you left behind. She flinched, but stayed. I made a mistake, she said softly. I thought I needed to lose you to find myself, but all I did was lose myself even more. Do you think saying that fixes it? No, she whispered. But not saying it felt worse. I wanted to scream, to ask her why now, why she waited until after everything, after Jose, after the healing, after Nancy, to decide she still had words left. But I didn't. I looked at her and said, I'm not yours to confess to anymore. She stepped forward. But you were, and you still live in everything I do. And yet you gave everything we were to someone else. I never loved him. That's the worst part, I snapped, because you knew that, and still chose him over me. She opened her mouth, closed it again, tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't move. I thought time would prove I was right to leave, she said, but all time did was prove I gave up something I was never meant to lose. You didn't lose me, I said coldly, you let me go. She stepped closer again. Do you still love me? I paused, and then, honestly, I know, I loved you so much it nearly broke me, but that love, it was buried the day you handed my forever to someone who didn't even know how to hold it. Her breath hitched. But I still see us, she whispered. When I close my eyes, I still see the version of us that never broke. I stepped back. Then close your eyes, because that version only exists there. I left her in the hallway. Nancy was waiting at home. She didn't ask where I'd been, she just handed me a mug of tea and curled up next to me on the couch. Her silence didn't press for answers, it just made space for me to sit with my own. Later that night, I told her. Everything. From the envelope to the street to the hallway. She listened, quiet, focused, steady. Then she said, you needed that. I hated every second. Still, she whispered, you needed it. I turned to her. You're not afraid I'll go back? She smiled without fear. I know what it feels like to be a final choice, and I know what it feels like to be the right one. You don't love the version of Linda that hurt you, you mourn it, that's not the same. I kissed her then, long, real. Because she was right. Linda may have been a chapter. But Nancy was the whole damn book. Linda showed up on my parents' front porch 2 days before Christmas, not with gifts, not with apologies, but with something more dangerous, nostalgia. It was late afternoon. I was just helping my father string the last few lights on the outer railing when I saw her car pull up slowly, hesitantly, like even it wasn't sure it should be there. She stepped out in a wool coat, the same color as the one she wore the winter we first said I love you. Her hair was tied back, no makeup, Her eyes looked like they hadn't rested in weeks. And in her hands, she held a small, weathered photo album, one I hadn't seen in years. I didn't move. She climbed the porch steps and paused, staring at me the way someone stares at a locked door they once had the key to. "Roger," she said. My father, sensing the sudden tension, quietly excused himself inside. Linda looked around, probably hoping he'd stay. I didn't invite her to sit. I didn't even move toward her. I stood my ground at the top of the steps. "What are you doing here?" Her voice trembled. "I thought maybe you'd let me talk." "Talk?" I echoed. "You think this is the time for small talk, Linda?" She held out the album. "I found this in storage. It's the one from our trip to Maine, remember?" I didn't take it. I remember a lot of things, Linda. None of them are helped by photo paper. "I went through it last night," she said, "and for the first time, I realized how real it all was, how real you were, and how unreal I had been." I said nothing. "Roger, I made a mistake." "You made a choice." She nodded slowly, as if that was worse. "I kept thinking I needed to figure myself out," she said, "that I couldn't become who I was meant to be if I kept tying myself to something so certain. You were too sure of me. You made me feel seen, and I didn't know what to do with that. I wanted to be admired, not known, and you knew me too well." "Dawn, to romanticize your betrayal," I said quietly. "It wasn't about self-discovery, it was about avoidance. You left because you couldn't bear to grow into someone with responsibility, with loyalty. You wanted the perks of love, not the discipline of it." Tears brimmed in her eyes. "I thought if I stayed, I'd disappear." "And what did leaving get you?" I asked. "Did you find yourself in the arms of someone you knew I trusted? Did you find yourself while rewriting our story to cast me as the villain?" She stepped forward. "I never wanted you to be the villain." "You made me one," I said. "You told people I controlled you, that I resented your dreams, that I made you small, and all I ever did was build the world you said you wanted. And when you were finally standing on the foundation I poured for you, you turned around and said you were drowning." Linda winced. I was scared. "So was I said, "but I didn't lie about it." There was silence. Then she said, "Jose's gone. He left 6 months ago." I raised an eyebrow. "Did you expect me to be happy about that?" "No, I wanted you to know that I'm not here because I'm lonely. I'm here because I miss you. Because I finally understand what I lost." "And what do you think I've been doing all this time?" I asked. "Waiting with open arms while you wandered through your midlife reinvention phase?" She looked down. "I was hoping I hadn't burned everything." I let that hang for a moment. Then, "You didn't just burn it. You scattered the ashes and built your new self out of what you took from me." "I didn't mean to." "You meant to leave. You meant to stay gone. You meant to stay silent until it benefited you to speak again. Don't pretend like that was an accident." She started crying then, full, shaking sobs. But I didn't move to comfort her. I let her cry. I let her feel it. Because for the first time, those tears weren't my responsibility. "I've changed," she said through broken breaths. "I know it's too late to fix what I broke, but I just need you to know, I'm not that girl anymore." I crossed my arms. "Then what do you want from me now? Closure, forgiveness, or a test to see if you still have access?" She shook her head. "I want you to know that you were the best thing that ever happened to me, and that I didn't realize it until I lost you. And now, I just want to be part of your life again, however you'll let me." I stared at her. Then I said, "Come with me." She blinked. "What?" "I want to show you something." She hesitated, then followed me down the porch steps. We walked a few blocks through the quiet winter air. I didn't speak. Neither did she. She walked just behind me, as if unsure whether she deserved to walk beside me anymore. We turned the corner onto 6th Street and stopped in front of a small house, modest, beautiful, glowing with warm yellow light from the windows. I pulled my phone from my pocket, unlocked the door remotely, and stepped aside. Linda looked confused. "What is this?" "My home." "You moved?" 8 months ago." "Why here?" I didn't answer. I led her through the front door. The scent of cinnamon and chamomile filled the air. The kitchen lights were on, a child's backpack lay by the hallway, a tiny pair of boots sat beside adult ones at the door. Linda looked around, awe spreading slowly across her face. And then, "Daddy!" a little girl's voice. Tiny footsteps came pattering down the hallway, and a 4-year-old bundle of curls and excitement crashed into my legs. I picked her up without hesitation. "Hey, sweetheart." Her arms clung to my neck like ivy. "You were gone forever." I smiled. 15 minutes, that's forever now? She nodded dramatically. "I drew you a unicorn. I can't wait to see it." That was when Linda realized. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. And then Cam, the voice from the kitchen. "Everything okay?" Nancy stepped into the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel, hair up in a loose bun, her eyes landing first on me, then on Linda. "Oh," she said, calm, firm. "It's you." Linda didn't speak. Nancy didn't flinch. The silence was a standoff, but not one of rivalry, one of reality, because Linda was now a visitor in a life that had nothing to do with her. Nancy walked over and kissed my cheek. "Dinner's ready, chicken pot pie and a unicorn-shaped cake for dessert." The little girl in my arms gasped. "You made it?" "I did," Nancy said, then looked at Linda. "Would you like to stay?" Linda stared, caught off guard. I shouldn't." "No," Nancy said. "You shouldn't. But it's your choice." Linda looked back at me. I met her gaze, and I said, "This is who I am now. This is the life I built when you walked out looking for yourself." Tears filled her eyes again, but she didn't cry this time. She just nodded. "She's beautiful." "She's happy," I replied. "Are you?" I looked around the room, at the lights, at the girl in my arms, at Nancy's quiet, powerful calm. Then I said, "I didn't find myself when you left. I just stopped losing myself every day trying to be enough for you." Linda stepped back slowly, nodding, unable to speak. She turned toward the door. Nancy walked her out. I didn't follow. A few minutes later, Nancy came back and sat next to me on the couch. "She said she won't come again," she whispered. I nodded. "She also said she finally understands what she gave up." "She'll carry that longer than I ever did," I murmured. Nancy leaned her head on my shoulder. "You okay?" I watched our daughter twirl in the living room with her unicorn drawing. "Yeah," I said, "I'm more than okay." And for the first time, I wasn't lying. A week after Linda showed up, her number lit up my screen again. I stared at it, thumb hovering over decline, but I let it ring, not because I cared what she had to say, because I wanted to remember that I didn't. That I'd evolved into someone who no longer confused closure with conversation. The call ended. She didn't leave a voicemail. That silence was louder than anything she could have said. Later that day, I received a manila envelope, no return address. Inside was a letter. Her handwriting again, the same curves, same false softness. I almost tossed it, almost, but I read it, every word. "Roger, I won't bother you again after this. I know it's too late to reclaim anything, but I need to say it so I can finally let go of the version of me who destroyed the best man I ever had. I told myself I was lost when I left you, that I was just trying to grow. But the truth is, I was afraid of becoming someone who stood still, afraid of someone seeing through the performance I called confidence. You saw everything, and instead of embracing it, I punished you for it. You didn't deserve the way I walked away. You didn't deserve the lies. You didn't deserve to have your loyalty rewritten as control, your consistency painted as confinement." And Jose? He wasn't love, he was a mirror, a reflection of everything shallow I thought I wanted, and in that mirror I saw exactly who I had become, someone who would trade gold for glitter. Now, I live with a view, I live with a claim, but I live alone. They say people don't realize what they had until it's gone. That's not true. I realized it the moment you didn't chase me. I wish you nothing but peace. I hope Nancy holds your heart the way I should have. I hope your daughter never learns what heartbreak tastes like. I just wanted to tell you, I did love you, I just didn't know how to hold it. Linda. I didn't reply. Not Beck. I didn't appreciate the honesty. But because it changed nothing. Some bridges don't burn in flames, they rot in the silence of neglect until the first step taken across them sends the whole structure crashing into a river you've already swum through and dried off from. I folded the letter once, tucked it into a drawer with the old things I no longer touched, not because I planned to revisit it, but because part of closure is knowing you can look back and choosing not to. The day after New Year's, Nancy and I took our daughter to the park. The sky was soft gray, the air sharp and clean. Laughter danced through the breeze. My little girl ran ahead, spinning in her coat, her mittens soaked from gripping snow too tightly. She turned back and called out, "Daddy, watch this!" And I did. I watched her tumble into a snowbank, giggling, eyes shining like they carried a whole galaxy behind them. Nancy looked at me, her face flushed from the cold, her smile effortless. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm perfect." She leaned into me. "You didn't even flinch when I said her name last night." "Because she's no longer mine to flinch for." Nancy paused. "Do you hate her?" "No," I said. "I'm grateful to her." Nancy tilted her head. "If she hadn't left," I said, "I'd never have found this." I didn't mean peace, I meant them. Her. The daughter who calls me her hero for pouring her cereal in a smiley face. The woman who never asks me to prove myself because she never doubts I'm enough. I meant the life Linda never imagined I could build without her. Weeks passed, winter melted into spring. Linda's name faded from conversations. Her gallery made headlines again. A viral video of her speech, something about healing, art, personal transformation. The world adored her. I didn't watch it, but people tagged me anyway. They always do. Some wounds leave scars, others become armor. Linda was never a scar, she was the reason I learned to protect my peace. 3 months later, I received an anonymous tip through a mutual contact. It was simple. She's planning to use parts of your old messages and writings in her memoir. The publisher, a big one, the draft already in editing. I didn't get angry, I got precise. My company had grown over the past year, expanding into copyright protection and machine learning fraud detection. One phone call, one query through our AI archive. Within hours, we had every line, time-stamped, proving the original content belonged to me. Another 48 hours, and our legal team had sent her publisher a polite, ironclad cease and desist, complete with a warning about infringement, financial penalties, and reputational damage. The publisher responded within a day. "We've removed all questionable content. We apologize for the oversight. Thank you for protecting your intellectual property." I forwarded the email to my attorney, then I forwarded it to Nancy. She replied with 3 words. "You gave her eternity." I smiled. That was the revenge. Not yelling, not lawsuits, not public call-outs. Just quiet, surgical accountability. Linda tried to profit off the version of me she abandoned, and I made sure the world saw me as the man who no longer needed her validation to be whole. A month later, I received a package. Inside, a signed copy of her book. No note. Just the title page. For Roger, I didn't know what eternity meant until you made it real. I threw it in the recycling bin. Nancy asked what it was. Just one else's unfinished chapter. We drove to the lake that weekend. The air was still, the sky a perfect reflection of water. I watched Nancy teaching our daughter to skip stones. She failed, again and again, but kept laughing, kept trying. It hit me then. Love isn't fireworks, it's showing up, it's choosing. It's watching someone fall and never once letting them think you'd leave if they didn't get back up fast enough. Linda once said she needed time to find herself. What she never realized was, I wasn't standing in her way. I was holding the mirror. And when she saw what was in it, she ran. Nancy? She looked in that mirror and smiled. And every day since, she's held mine. That is eternity, not promises, not proposals, not grand declarations, but the simple, quiet choice to stay. And Linda? She can keep chasing herself in circles. While I spend forever walking in a straight line, with the woman who never needed to find herself to know what she had.